Hello,
Hello, hello.
everybody. You guys, thank you. I know there's like 1,000 people watching on the live stream right now, so seems like low stakes here. But let me turn this on. All right, I'm Ben Caginell. It says Benjamin, but you just call me Ben. I'm an attorney by trade, so I've been an attorney in the state of California 16 years now. I have a master's in financial management and accounting as well. So just means I have a lot of arrows in the quiver. I like working with startups. This is what I enjoy doing. I've been working in the corporate space for as many years as I've been practicing law. Been doing grant writing and development work for the last decade. I'm not sure, don't ask me the story how I got into it, because then we'll just get on a tangent. It has nothing to do with this topic. So suffice it to say, this is where I am today. I've been working in the venture space specifically for the last 4 years. I've had the opportunity to work with some really innovative, unique companies, transportation technology, battery technology, food and ag tech, across the board. I'm really good at connecting the dots and telling the story, right? That's what I'm good at. So this grant writing piece is, a lot of it is technical writing, a lot of it is telling the story in the right way. And so we'll go through some of the nuances here. And honestly, like, there's so few of us, just ask questions, interrupt me 1,000 times, it's all good. I want to get all your guys' questions answered today. If you guys have some pen and paper, it doesn't look like we do, but I have some handouts up there on that table, and there's some Post-it notes. If you have a pen, we're going to go through like a couple exercises, just if we have some time. And so it'll force you to like write something out, a couple sentences. We're gonna practice. Because I'm kind of, I learn by doing usually. Okay. I don't want to change, Cameron. Oh, okay. Well. What it would have said is, let me open mine. And when Cameron comes back, I'll swap. So the next slide would have said who we are. Okay. For whatever reason, this is not wanting to work. So when Cameron comes back, I'll ask him. So I'm Advocacy Chief. Again, that's the firm I run. We got funded by the city of Sacramento. So this project is brought by the city of Sacramento. They funded us through their innovation department, their economic development innovation. And obviously we partnered with Cameron over at Sac State in the Carlson Center. We also partnered with UC Davis Venture Catalyst. It's really important that we connect the dots between the public and the private on a project like this. What did I do wrong? Okay, all right.
Technology.
You guys, this doesn't look good for me. I'm just gonna be honest, but it's okay.
We'll scrub it from
We're gonna keep it moving. I am a technologist at heart, I promise. Okay, so yeah, these are the folks there that we've also partnered with some folks like Momentum, some venture capital firms in the region. Everybody kind of has a vested interest in ensuring that federal research and development dollars come to this region and support our small businesses in growing their business. So what is the SAC SBIR project? Again, it's things like this. We're doing workshops. We have technical review. So if you're writing a grant, particularly the SBIR, we can help you review it and provide feedback for you. We provide direct grant writing support. We had a free program. It's now a discounted program because we're at capacity. But we also support with other things like registration. If you've ever gone through the SBIR registration, it is very time consuming and tedious and confusing at times and can be frustrating. Again, goal to find companies. We want to increase private sector commercialization of innovations. So that means the federal government invests in your company to go out and make your company grow. Okay, well, this is the meat and potatoes. Okay, how many of you guys have actually heard of the SBIR or SBIR program? A couple of you. Who hasn't heard of it? Everybody. Can I just assume everybody who didn't raise their hand saying they knew about it doesn't know about it? Okay. So this stands for the Small Business Innovation Research Program, or the Small Business Technology Transfer Research Program. There's a slight distinction between the two. This one requires a university partner, and we can get a little bit into that, but we won't get too much into the weeds. Whereas this one can be open to any small business without any other partners. But this is one of the few specific grants at the federal level designated for small business, okay? Any other grant that you're probably going to be applying for at the federal level, give me a ton of competition from companies that have huge balance sheets and doing massive projects. They have lobbyists and things like that that you will be competing with. Doesn't mean you won't win. It just means competition is different. And this is specifically for small business, okay? So this was funded to the tune of about $4.3 billion last year. It's funded through 2025. Obviously, there's a lot going on right now at the federal level, so things are kind of up in the air. But my instincts tell me this is one of those few programs that's very bipartisan in nature. Small business is very bipartisan in nature. So the likelihood that this gets cut, well, I'm not going to opine on that. I just feel like, it's got some kind of stickiness to it. Okay, so the SBIR is phased. Okay, so what does that mean? So that means in states other than California, there's a phase 0, but for California's purpose, but there's a phase 1 and phase 2 program. So phase 1, that's kind of like validation. So I think I heard this explanation. I think it's a good explanation. Okay, so you think about research and development. There's a big R and a little r, a big D and a little d, right? For research and development. The big R means there's an emphasis on research, right? The little r means research is kind of secondary and opposite, positively for development, right? So phase 1 is a big R, little d, means the emphasis is on research, okay? With a little bit of commercialization, you're trying to validate that there's something there worth pursuing in terms of commercialization, right? So this can be pre-prototype, but you're developing a prototype to validate. It could be you have a prototype, you want to validate whether it works for its intended purpose. But everything that happens has to be, again, high risk, high reward. Okay, that's kind of the common denominator. And we're going to go through. There's going to be a sheet over there. I brought some handouts with an assessment guide on it, and we'll walk through some of those things because it'll help you kind of understand what the SBIR, what the SBIR programs are looking for in terms of, yes.
Are they the same or different?
They're different. So they're the same but different. That's my attorney answer for you. Okay? There's the same because there's small businesses at the core. Okay? The difference is there's some slight differences. SBIR means the SBIR program is specifically for SBIR program is specifically for intellectual property that's come from the university. It spins from the university. It was developed by the university. The university owns the IP, and you're essentially, the small business is licensing it to spin out into the public for commercialization. And we have Raphael here, who's the technology transfer office for Sacramento State. You want to raise your hand real quick? So this is the gentleman who's in charge of if there's intellectual property that's owned by the university and you want to spin it out into the commercial sector, the public sector, you would work with Raphael to gain a license for that intellectual property in order to conduct research to commercialize it. That's the difference. So that's the main difference with the STTR. SBIR does not require a university connection. Okay, and there's some differences as well in terms of like the division of labor. So an SBIR requires the small business to conduct the vast majority of the research, whereas the STTR requires the university to conduct a portion of the research. So again, we're working towards increasing market validation and accelerating commercialization, okay? And I say funding inherently favors collaboration with university, industry, and other partners. When I say university, it's because if you think about it, most of the intellectual property that's generated is generated within the confines of the university and then spun out because that's where a lot of the money is concentrated, that's where the labs are concentrated, the physical infrastructure to do this. Of course, there are some private enterprises that do this very well. But again, a lot of intellectual property, especially in this region, is generated from Sacramento State and UC Davis.
What about inventors?
Yeah, I think inventors will fall under this small business, this SBIR. So we've worked with a number of inventors who kind of are tinkerers outside the confines of the university, who have their own small business, who want to pursue that that technology without a university partner, and that's happened. But essentially, you have to have a place that you're going to do the research somewhere, right? The government probably won't fund you if you say your garage is where you're doing your research. So there should be some like physical infrastructure where you're doing it. You can have a home office, right? But like if you're doing a lab work, you're probably going to want a lab environment to do that work for fidelity. And please, lots of questions. I want all the questions. Like we have the space here, we have this time. If you guys have specific questions you think are really personal, you can ask me afterwards and I'll hang around.
Can you get them to pay for the lab?
Yeah, so that's a direct cost typically on a small business innovation research program. You can indirect costs are capped typically at a certain percentage of direct costs, but anything direct cost that's directly related to the research can be funded by the Small Business Innovation Research Program. That includes accountants specific to the project for like compliance, but not for like things like patent protection. Patent protection are viewed as unallowable costs, and that's like a whole nother topic. We just did one on budget. We could spend like an hour just on budget. Some of these numbers are a little bit outdated, okay, because they're constantly evolving. With each new phase or with each new release, they're like increasing the amounts available to the public. So today, DOE, it was 200, now it's 250. This is 275, it's really 305 now today for phase 1, National Science Foundation. USDA offers it's a smaller program, kind of like the Department of Education. They offer smaller grants of up to $175,000 for phase 1. And this DOE one just came out, so I'll go over some of the topics that came out in the Department of Energy grant. The NSF one is particularly interesting, the National Science Foundation, because this is an evergreen opportunity. And what I mean by evergreen is it's open all year round. And there's typically instead of submitting a full proposal and then getting rejected, which happens a lot to people, okay, because it's about 10 to 15% success rate for these, I'm just gonna be honest. But what the NSF will do is they'll have you submit a project pitch, a 2 to 3 page that says, this meets our criteria, we're giving you the green light, you get a year to submit your proposal for phase 1, right? So the NSF really covers pretty much every imaginable STEM topic you can think of. Whereas each of these other agencies are just very, very narrowly focused on their particular topic. So NSF kind of like where we go generally for your first stop if you've never applied for SBIR and maybe the timing isn't right on the other agencies, we can always go to the NSF and submit a project pitch. And I'll show you how through our partnership with Scout Climate, who is my partner on this project and who I'm basically running California operations for, you can actually sign up for Scout and just get your project pitch done at no cost through our platform. And then I can review it for you. Okay, so again, phase 1, 250, 300, about 175 to 300 grand for a phase 1, okay? Those typically last 6 to 12 months. So when you're thinking about your validation or your research project, it's got to last at least 6 months. If you're like so far along on the commercialization route that you're about to go out the door in like 2 months, and this project is probably not for you, right? This is like, you have a long road ahead of you. You have a visionary idea. You're trying to bring it to life, and this is the funding mechanism that'll help you get there.
So say you're 3 months from a truly viable product, MVP, minimum viable product.
Yes.
Or a really good prototype that
Sure.
tests. We're talking solar and batteries.
Okay.
Then, but you're going to need time after that to prepare for commercialization, to refine the development.
Yeah, I think you're still in the SBIR space for sure. Yeah, and it sounds like what you're doing is actually relevant to some of these topics that just came out in the DOE. So you'll probably want to take a look and then connect with me afterwards. Okay.
How they vet you, and let's say you reach 5 months, 6 months, but there's a small roadblock. How did you?
Yeah. So how do they vet you? Is that what you said?
Yeah.
So typically when you submit your proposal, okay, really good proposals will have the research strategy will be a series of a go, no-go decisions. Okay, this is what the government is going to be looking for. So each particular one, there's like a roadmap where you're going to have to say, like, if I don't get this right, then we're not going to continue with the research, right? Like each one of those steps, and you have to identify those clearly throughout your research project. So that would mean if you hit the no-go for whatever reason, then you either, there's a pivot that you have to do that you've articulated in your research plan, or you've risked it and you failed, which is actually very common in this space here, right? Like this is what they're asking. This is what they're asking for. They want high risk, high reward, right? The high risk part means there's a likelihood of failure. So again, those go, no go decisions are critical marker points along the research. So you'll have to articulate those very clearly for the government. You can't have something where it's they're all interconnected in some way and it's like kind of all jumbled, right? There has to be like kind of segmented research and development roadmap. So you're like discrete chunks of the research that will culminate in this like MVP or testing of this MVP or whatever your research indicates. Let me see, anything else here? So, okay, so phase 1, 6 to 12 months. Phase 2, again, 12 to 24 months. So you're looking at about a 1 to 3 year research and development roadmap. And again, for phase 2, when I said phase 1 was big R, little d, phase 2 is big D, little r. It means you're heavy on the development, lighter on the research. You're refining your product and you're getting it towards commercialization, okay? The end goal for phase 2 is commercialization. Again, big R, little d for phase 1, big D, little r for phase 2. But they both require research and development in both phases. Okay. Any questions on that? So I'm sorry, this didn't come out great down here. I'll tell you what it said. But this, the Department of Energy just came out with their FOA for the SBIR, and they just released their topics. So again, when you think about what topics are relevant in the SBIR space, a really good indicator is looking at kind of our broad, public policy goals. So today, again, things are going to shift, right? But today, there's a major push by 2040, 2050 to be basically carbon neutral, right? How are we going to accomplish that? There's a lot of technologies that don't exist today that need to be created in order for us to meet those mandates. So when you think about, for example, how are we going to accommodate, an entire ecosystem of electric vehicles or hydrogen-powered vehicles, right? It requires a certain amount of infrastructure that may or may not exist today. So these are the things that the federal government is interested in funding. As it were, nuclear energy is making a massive return to the scene, and you're seeing, especially when it comes to things like AI, and how are we going to power these massive systems that require 24/7 power? Like this is a major problem for our society. So nuclear energy, there's like a whole page, one of the largest sections in the DOE topics is around nuclear energy. You also see a lot around vehicle technology, so battery technologies, EV infrastructure, solar, bidirectional solar charging, anything that's going to advance the current state of the market from where it's at, make it more efficient, less costly, right? Help us meet those broad public policy goals. That's what the Small Business Innovation Research Program is pushing. So advanced materials and manufacturing, in our region, manufacturing is really important as well. Advanced materials as well. We just had a webinar with DMEA, which is Defense Microelectronics. Here, they actually based out of McClellan, but we have a pretty strong semiconductor ecosystem here in the region. But everything that you're going to see, like there's going to be some kind of AI ML component in a lot of these, right? Like how can we leverage that to accelerate the technology? A lot on this grid modernization, especially in rural parts of America. right? Like how are we going to meet the energy demand across parts of the United States that require currently long distance transmission of energy? So again, when you look through these, oh yes, please.
So I'm seeing, if a whole lot of energy is going into nuclear and into the grid, say the utilities, then if we come up with products that will basically obviate, get rid of nuclear energy and take the power out of the grid and put it in the hands of the distributed generation and storage. What do you see in terms of potential hostile,
Yeah, I mean,
so much resistance from behind?
I mean, I've had, one of my clients was actually, they did distributed battery technology, and you'll find some partners like SMUD are like really kind of see the future and they kind of rally behind it and they start planning for it. And then some folks see, home ownership of like, distributed battery technology is kind of like an existential threat to their operations. So it kind of depends, right? You're seeing you're seeing a mix of both.
That's why I'm asking the question, because I have come in with non-lithium batteries and literally been told non-lithium batteries will be deemed non-responsive.
Interesting.
It was aimed at me, obviously, but because I had challenged it in the previous SBIR.
Okay.
New SBIR comes out that way and is basically a slap in the face. So what I'm wondering is about the government's interest in the existing industries that are already at scale versus someone who's going to come in and disrupt those industries.
This program in particular is looking for the disruptors. So I think some of your standard programs, right, some of these scale programs are looking for technologies that have already been tested, that have already been vetted, that are less risky to adopt in the market, in the public space, right? Because you got to remember, at the end of the day, most of the people who are going to be adopting these are going to be politicians who have to stand behind a podium and explain why it did or did not work, right? So there's a risk aversion happening. When it comes to this, right, they're looking for the moonshots. So
that's what I'm saying.
You got resistance in the previous.
Of course, I had challenged it. I had said we're doing non-lithium instead. They had asked for lithium, and said we're doing non-lithium instead of lithium.
Yeah.
And
you got some resistance.
Discouraged, but then when the next one came out, it said specifically
non-lithium
will be deemed
non-responsive. There's some policy behind it. There's something happening, but I think, yeah, I don't know about that specifically. What I would say is we should connect afterwards, and I can have our PhDs who are very familiar with the agencies, like do a little bit of inquiry. Maybe it's you just went to the wrong agency. It could be that the NSF is the place for you and not DOE. So I don't know. I don't. Maybe USDA is the place. Like that's what the thing is. Like one of the things that we found through our Scout platform, especially, right, is that we're constantly scouring for grants. People tend to be pretty myopic. Is that right? Like really focused on like the kind of right in front of them. They just have to open their vision. They, maybe DOE isn't right for them. There's a Department of Defense grant that'll be more appropriate. Maybe USDA is the right grant for you because the distributed energy is more important to the USDA folks than it is the Department of Energy, maybe NSF. So again, each one of these agencies have their own values and focuses and priorities. And so our job is to try to connect you with at the right place at the right time. And that's what we're constantly, it's like a constant iterative process of just like reaching out to folks, trying to see where your technology best fits within this kind of landscape of agencies. Hope that helps.
It does.
I'm going to get a copyright office because I have this problem with copyright. I mean, people would take my ideas like crazy, and it's like,
yeah.
They want me to section. I was like, so.
Well, that's an interesting point. So,
and I'm not a student, so I'm trying to not say it. But I have such a variety of experience and things, it's like, it's got to be hard knocks. That's hard to get respect for that.
When it comes to intellectual property, I think that was one of the reasons I really encourage folks to not discount the university partnership. Because
University partnership
with any university, with Sacramento State, with I'll explain. It might not be particular to your specific question. I apologize. Well, if we can connect afterwards, if it's like, it's tangential, but I would say, so, right, acquiring intellectual property is one thing, right? It's usually a less costly proposition. It's still costly to go and get a patent. It might cost you tens of thousands of dollars potentially, right? Because you have to hire very technical experts and it's a drawn out process potentially. But the costly part is actually trying to defend the IP. It's not acquiring the IP. It's what happens when someone takes your idea and starts running with it, right? And then most of us, small businesses, don't have the resources to go and try to defend against somebody who's trying to steal their IP, right? We got to focus on our business. So having a university partner to kind of bankroll the defense because they have a vested interest in protecting that IP is kind of an interesting proposition for a small business. So that's what my 2 cents on that. I think obviously it's a very nuanced conversation and don't just take it at face value, but. Okay, so we've talked a little bit about kind of what type, the program. Now let's talk about like some basic requirements. Most of you guys are going to fit the bill here. For-profit entity, okay? You have to be incorporated. Can't not be incorporated. So you have to have some kind of corporate structure. Has to be located in the United States. Has to be majority owned by US citizens or permanent residents. And then the small business requirement, which is fewer than 500 employees, and then some income thresholds, which if any of you guys are exceeding the small business thresholds, then I want to talk to you guys after. Give me a job. Okay. Again, these are just the basic things. I got some more verbiage here. Cameron's going to send you all this presentation afterwards. And I have some handouts there that will kind of go over some of the stuff. This is the one here that you should have in your hands. And if you don't, it says, is your company a good fit for SBIR, STTR funding? It's on the back side of that. So this is a self-assessment guide I put together so you guys can kind of walk through and see if this is the right thing for you, okay? Some of these figures are a little bit older. I'm gonna update this, right? It's more like 500 to 2 million, 2.5 million today. So, I mean, some agencies, you can get over $2 million through the course of this grant. I mean, that's a lot of money. That's going to extend your roadmap significantly if you're able to get this funds. And then I would say most people are able to leverage the SBIR to get private investment as well.
Can you go back one slide? I had a question on that. One more. Oh, yeah. So a lot of areas are very overcrowded. Vehicle infrastructure to energy. Some areas are still developing. How does SBIR cater for those areas other than this only?
Yeah.
VCs are throwing in money in the area left and right, but mostly they just scope out the larger and then.
Yeah. You'll find here that the government is typically investing where the VCs aren't. I think that's one thing. That's one thing that I think is important to note.
This would just be purely GovTech gives you an advantage.
No, I don't know that it wouldn't necessarily just give you an outright advantage, but everything here has some kind of connection to the government or the public sector in some way, shape, or form, right? It's connected to some kind of government policy that's trying to be implemented. So to the extent that you're solving a problem that is of importance to the government, right? There's a public policy kind of push behind that, then there's probably going to be funding for what you're doing. Whether it's the SBIR or something else, right? Because the SBIR is not always, it's not the answer for everything. I'll just put that out, right? It's not for some. Like there's a lot of folks that the SBIR just doesn't make sense for. There might be some other, contracts or other grant opportunities that might be better suited. Yeah. And then I would say, back to my other comment that I said, it depends on the agency, really. Like some agencies, they'll be very prescriptive in what they want, and they'll tell you, we're looking for, like the Department of Energy is very prescriptive in what they want. They're saying, like, we want this, and these are the topics that we're gonna fund. And if you fall out outside these topics, it's gonna be non-responsive, right? Some are like, pitch us your idea, we're gonna tell you if we like it. You know, just depends. And you kind of gotta, we have a lot of what we do is just calling the agency and just connecting them with the founders and like, hey, this is what we're doing. Is this of interest to you guys, or who would this be of interest to within your network? Okay, so this is going to give you a sense, right? I put it into 3 different categories: research and development, market-driven criteria, and then innovation criteria. Okay, the research and development has to meet kind of the scope and the duration, right? Like, is it a big enough project, in terms of time and money, like, or is you only need 3 months to get it done, right? Because you're going to just piece together existing technologies and make something new. Yeah, this question here, is it so, I forget it's touchscreen. Is it so innovative that it might not work? It seems counterintuitive, but again, the government is interested in investing in the space where VC is not. Okay, so VC is not going to invest where they think their money's going to go down the drain, but the government will. I'm just teasing. But yeah, I think it's in a sense, right? Like that's kind of, they're trying to stimulate the innovation space. They're willing to take those risks to get the benefit. They know over the long term, they can think long term, and over the long term, they will gain the benefits from making these investments. So market-driven criteria, right? These are important. I was hearing Cameron talk about this earlier, but like, is there a market fit? Like, does the market even want this, right? And if the answer is no, right, or if the answer is they already have it, well then they're not going to be really interested in what you're doing, right? But you need to be able to describe with specificity the market needs, the customer needs, like who your customer is, what the commercial opportunity is. Like you need to be able to understand, especially with the NSF. So some agencies like the NIH, not as important, the market piece on phase 1. For the NSF, there's a third of the proposal is market. And if you can't articulate the market opportunity, you're not going to get anywhere with this proposal. So they need to be able to see that it's not just a moonshot in terms of the technology, innovating in the technology, but in terms of the market opportunity as well. There's a massive market opportunity to be tapped here. Because again, right, is it, in the sense of like, is it worth the $1 million to $2 million they're going to invest to tap that market opportunity? So the innovation criteria, again, this is the question I get a lot, right? Is it innovative enough? And it's kind of hard. It's like a little bit of a murky crystal ball, right? Because, it's beauty's in the eye of the beholder. But, yeah, can you articulate how this product would meet your customer needs? Like, how is it going to meet it different than what it's being met today? Like, where's the state of technology today, and where are you going to take it, right? Can you articulate that? And if it's just like a little half step, probably not going to be enough for an SBIR. But if it's like a big old leap, that's SBIR territory, right? Is it more than just an incremental improvement, right? Incremental improvement. So, is it just like 1.0 to 2.0, or is it like really changing everything on its head? Can you articulate the roadmap, right? So it's not enough that you have the idea and that you validated the market, but you have to have the technical ability to lay out that roadmap, right? And the government needs to have confidence in your team to be able to meet that roadmap. So who's on your team? Again, this is why universities are important, because universities have a lot of credibility in terms of being able to meet the overall goals of research and development, right? Like they have track records, they have accounting systems, they have transparency, right? Like the government's used to giving them money. Government's not as used to giving, the average Joe a big old $2 million check, right? So your team is important. Who's on your team is important. Their track record is important.
If you associate with the university, then you can get more.
Say that again?
If you associate with a university, like I'm alumni of 2 universities.
Yes.
Or you go back to your old university, or
I would say it would increase your probability of success. It's not going to guarantee your success, of course, but, and again, if it's just like, you get a letter of support, that's one thing. If they're a strategic, intentional partner in some way, shape, or form.
like a university professor.
Yeah, like a university professor. So a A lot of what we're doing is like making sure that, you know, lab facilities, like university lab facilities are world class, right? They have access to technology and equipment that most of us don't have. Those are the kind of, you know, you want to be able to test your hypothesis on that kind of equipment versus maybe, you know, older equipment. So this makes a difference in terms of your credibility of your technology roadmap and your product development. Again, technical risk. Okay. We went technical risk here, so innovative might not work, right? The product roadmap is, there's a lot of technical risk. And then can you commercially, so can you design a 6 to 12 month experiment, right? Can you get this done in 12 months? Like that roadmap has to be laid out in 12 months, it has to be reasonable. You have to gain confidence of the reader that you can actually do that in the time limit that you say you're gonna do it, right? You're not pitching like a 10-year project in like 6 months. So that's the general assessment guide. If you get to the bottom here and it says yes, right, then I'm your guy. But I think at the same time, if you're just curious about grants in general, if you want to ask questions about even non-SBIR grants, if you're interested in doing business with the government, come talk to me. That's kind of what I do on an everyday basis. Okay, so what next? Oh, we had that. I was going to do a little exercise. I don't know if you guys. What time is it right now?
It's 3:11, so we have about 20 minutes.
Okay. Well, maybe not. So I have here this other handout here is the Heilmeier Catechism. Okay. So this is kind of the precursor to your project pitch right here. So the Heilmeier Catechism is developed through the Department of Defense back in like the 50s or the 60s. It's a weird name, but the idea is these are the same 9 questions that you would answer for any research and development project grant that you'll ever do. Okay, whether it's battery technology, whether it's ed tech, whether it's ag tech, it doesn't matter. The fundamentals here stay the same, right? And the goal here is, so question 1, I was gonna have you guys do a practice on question run, right? With like, what are you trying to do without using any jargon whatsoever? This is actually a pretty hard exercise. With, you know, in as few words as possible. Yeah.
Double or triple the efficiency of today's solar at a lower cost with no supply chain choke points.
I like it. I like the way you operate. This is so like I have some examples here that I pulled up. Let me share. Okay, so here's a before and then an after, okay? I'll share these with Cameron too, so you guys have them written. We're developing a novel DC, so this is energy storage example. If this doesn't make any sense, it's not my fault, okay? We're developing a novel DC link capacitorless voltage source converter utilizing wide band gap semiconductors for grid-tied battery energy storage systems with enhanced power density reliability. I don't know what any of that means, okay? When you write, you gotta write to someone like me, someone who's a technical expert but has no technical expertise, right? Someone like you're talking to your grandpa, or you're talking to a 5th grader, or talking to someone who's just you met off the street and you're trying to explain to them your technology, they don't know anything. So instead of that, right, think about we're creating a more reliable and compact power conversion system that helps connect batteries to the electrical grid. Our system eliminates failure-prone components and uses advanced materials to make grid-scale energy storage more practical and cost-effective. Again, we want to avoid the jargon. Like when you write that first question out, and do it. When you write it out, do it. Don't worry about the jargon. Just write out how you're going to write it out. But then go look at it again and say, which words that I'm using here might someone like Ben not understand? You know, like what are those really sciencey technical words? Get those out of there, right? At least to begin with. You'll have plenty of time to describe in detail what your research project is, but you need to be able to tell your story effectively and communicate to someone like me, someone who doesn't have a PhD in chemistry or PhD in computer science or whatever, you know? I'll share one other example. it's a cybersecurity example. We're implementing a quantum-resistant cryptographic protocol with distributed ledger technology for securing grid edge device communications and advanced metering infrastructure. Again, sounds smart, right? But for your reader, they're not going to be able to absorb what that means, right? You need to be able to say it in a way that they're going to be able to absorb it. So instead, we're creating a new security system. I understand security system, okay, that protects smart electric meters from both current and future cyber threats, including those from quantum computers. This keeps the power grid safe and reliable as it becomes more connected. See the difference? You got to be able to talk. The nerdy part will come, okay? When you're describing your research and you have to like lay out everything that you're doing, it's going to get very technical in nature. But when you're telling your story, when you're trying to relay the impact, and you need to be able to communicate it in a way that's not draped in that sciencey speak. Okay, so your practice, your exercise, right? This is what I would do. Is I would go through and I would draft the 9 questions. I would go through those 9 questions and try to write those out on your own. Don't use ChatGPT. Okay, try to just on your own for this one time, because this platform is AI powered, machine learning powered. Okay, it'll do all that. It's trained on tens of thousands of federal research and development grants. Okay, it's designed for STEM. It's not designed for your everyday applications. This is designed to specifically meet the needs for researchers who are trying to draft very technical proposals. Okay, but before we get there, I want you to take the time to try to answer those questions that I provided you, which will then be the basis, would be part of the documentation you upload in here that will help you draft your project pitch, okay? So step 1, those 9 questions I gave you. Step 2 is you go to Scout Climate, you sign up for a free account, okay? And then when you go and you go there, if you're having trouble, you're just gonna reach out to me, you're gonna book 30 minutes with me, I'll give you guys my calendar's right here. It's open to everybody. Just book time with me. I don't care. City's paying for it. Thank you, City of Sacramento. Once you finish that Heilmeyer Catechism, those 9 questions, you'll upload that document into here, along with any other business plans you have, any other schematics. If you give a TED Talk and you have a video, I'm looking at you, Ben. You would upload that in here, any kind of media, okay? And then it's going to produce your project pitch, and then we'll go over together, okay? You'll make an appointment before if you need help getting through it. You'll make an appointment with me afterwards. We'll review it, okay? And then we're going to get your project pitch submitted and hopefully approved, and then we're off to the races. We're writing an SBIR. Okay, one last thing, timing, okay? So you guys know, because I mentioned typically takes like the phase 1 is like 6 to 12 months, okay? But that's not the whole story. So when you're writing your proposal, again, government takes a little bit of time. You can't just snap your fingers and get the money, okay? From the time you start, submit, review, approve, contract in hand with money is about a 9 to 12 month proposition, okay? So when you're writing your proposal, you got to think a year out, and then develop your roadmap is another year. Okay, so just context, frame of mind. You got it. That's why this is really a deep tech play, right? If this is just like a pure like B2C, you got an app, you can whip out an app and like hit the market. This is not that, right? This is like you have a vision. You're working at it. You need to extend your roadmap. You've got some investor dollars, but you want to make them go farther. This is how you kind of create what I would call a capital stack that's very intentional and is meant to extend your roadmap through commercialization. Okay, so like how do you leverage? Like you might get a seed investment, you might have like a pre-seed round, friends and family. You get $250,000, you raise it. That's going to get you through the grant submission and like maybe another 6 months till you get the award notification. Like you kind of got to think about that strategically, how you plan your capital stack. So this is not going to be like those immediate dollars. You need to be able to, but at the same time, if you ignore it, and you're eligible for this, you're essentially giving away pieces of your company you don't need to give away, because that money is going to come from somewhere, and it's probably going to come from a private investor who's going to ask for equity in return. So if you can get it from the government instead, I would suggest it.
So if you're going to be ahead of their game in time, like if you can foresee, having product already tested and stuff before they would even hand you the money, but you can see that it could be useful.
Yeah,
Or you can be working on another project.
that could be it too. They could be like, what's the next step in my roadmap, right? And you're thinking about where I'm at today, right? I might have an MVP. I might be selling it to some initial customers, the prototype to get some product, customer feedback. But I want to there's still iterations that need to happen.
But in this case, you're actually still in development of one thing, and other things are modeled and waiting to be brought forward and developed.
Yeah.
So that's different from already in the market.
Yes,
And
it is.
What would the response be?
You might get back that you maybe, past phase one, this is not necessarily phase one material. That might be the one thing I'm thinking of. But I would suggest that we connect offline and you give me the download, and then I'll be able to run you through your options. That's what I'm happy to do that. Okay. I don't know that I'm gonna have the right answer for you right now. Any other questions? Again, book time here. This is not an empty offer. Please book time on my calendar. I usually charge like $300 an hour. Okay, that's not a joke. Right? Those are my hourly rates. Book my time, please. Giving it away. Okay. Any other questions? Thank you.
No final question. Well, let's give it a bit.
Thank you.
I highly recommend checking out his resources. If you feel free to hang out, we do have our final event for the day at 5:30. So that's the Sacramento Entrepreneurial State of the Union. So we hope you join us, but we'll be back at it tomorrow as well. So thank you again.
Thank you, Karen.
Turn on the live stream.
Broadcast the whole conversation.